Where do I even begin with this one? This is one of those times where I was recommended something that I truly believe to be a hidden gem, and I just couldn't stop myself from yapping about it, of course. Now, based on the title of this film alone, one might assume that it's a documentary-style film about worms, reptiles, and perhaps various other phallic-shaped objects that come to mind. But unfortunately, that's not at all what we'll be discussing. In fact, it's far more interesting, in my opinion. Pink Snake Pit is just one of those films that honestly, you're gonna have to watch it more than once just to see all the shit that was hiding in the background that you completely missed the first time around. Before diving into this film, I really want you guys to go ahead and click the link in the description and actually watch it for yourselves, because simply watching my video by itself is not the same at all. I mean, just to give you guys a forewarning, I take a comedic approach with some of my videos just to kind of break the tension that exists in some of these films, so it's not gonna be quite as scary, because that's not what the intention of my videos are. So I want you guys to first watch the film, get your scares out, get your heebie-jeebies out, and then come back and watch my analysis, you stinker. And also, I do want to say that while I do take a slightly comedic approach with these types of videos that I do, I don't want to shy away from the fact that there are some seriously dark subjects touched on in this film, mainly in regards to various forms of violence. So if you guys are sensitive to that at all, then this is not the right video for you. Please click off and, I don't know, watch me play The Endless Forest or something. I don't care. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's strap in for this one, shall we? Already the opening shot of this film is really impressive. It opens up with a young girl walking up to a very lovely Victorian-style home that honestly kind of reminds me of, what was that rich lady's name? Winchester. That lady, yeah, she really fucked her whole house up, didn't she? The girl announces that she's home and appears to be carrying a script for a high school play. Oh, the flashbacks. She seems very excited for her upcoming show, even though the dates were pushed back. As she's saying this, however, she looks down and notices sleeping bags lined up on the floor. She naively asks if her dad and presumably her brother Freddie are going camping, but predictably no one responds. Yeah, you bet they're going camping. On the floor, completely zipped up in their sleeping bag. Despite her many questions, still no one answers, and conveniently, right as she questions the sleeping bags on the floor, we hear a grandfather clock blaring away in the background. And no, unfortunately, it's not because dinner is ready. Now, in the next scene, we are shown the girl walking into the dining area where there appears to be papers on the table hinting at several overdue payments. We'll get into that later. Understandably, our main protagonist appears to be panicking. She still continues to look for her other family members. All the while, it is revealed to us that someone is lurking ominously in the background. The girl begins to cautiously walk up the stairs and calls out for her grandma, but as usual, no one answers. It is here that she slowly turns around and walks back down the stairs, and if you look closely, you'll notice that the personification of every theater kid's dead hopes and dreams is still lurking in the background. Upon opening the sleeping bag, she discovers the very much deceased Freddie, and that's when the unthinkable happens. Now, you would think that our main protagonist was dispatched right away due to the blow to the back of her head, but sadly, that does not appear to be the case at all. Rather, she is in a state of limbo and sent to some abstract form of purgatory. For the majority of this portion of the film, she is confined to one room with a dining table, a china cabinet, and what appears to be a shelf. There are also several very telling drawings hidden in the background of this room, but again, we'll get into that later. After brutally disrespecting a Publix rotisserie chicken, the scene abruptly changes to her standing over said rotisserie chicken at a kitchen table, illuminated by a single lamp. She turns her head to the right as a dog begins to bark outside. She walks over to the shelf to grab some Treatos for the dog, but when she opens the door, there is no dog. Only the abyss. Maybe the dog was the abyss we formed along the way. along with all of our other maladaptive habits. Here we can sort of hear the dog's barking get cut off abruptly as it makes this weird squealing sound. So he's probably just dead now or something. Well, shit. Upon returning to the dining table, the girl discovers that her head is in fact still bleeding. Also, if you look very closely here in the background, a pew-pew stick briefly flickers on the floor before vanishing, and a picture frame flies off the wall. When the camera zooms in on the picture, we see that the name John Oh shit, fuck, hold on. I can't see this shit. John English, John Arbuckle. Oh, John Ingrid, yes, John Ingrid. She picks up the picture and puts it back on the wall, probably having the exact same reaction as me. All the while, someone keeps knocking on the door. When finally answering the door, she is greeted by two men in suits. In this situation, I already know that I wouldn't be answering the door. It's probably my landlord or something. The man in the tan suit asks to speak with her regarding a very serious matter. When she asks what the fuck is going on, the man in the blue suit interjects and introduces themselves as Detectives Atticus and Miliani, and that they are both looking into a disappearance. Blue suit guy, okay. I don't know which one is Atticus and which one is Miliani, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna call the blue suit guy G-Man, and we're gonna call the tan suit guy Cubbage. It's much easier that way, trust me. No. It really is much more convenient that way. I promise you. Trust. G-Man claims that the missing girl used to live in the same house as our protagonist and asks the girl to let them in her home. Without hesitation, she obliges. The two men enter the room and look ominously around at the scenery. All the while, she leaves the door wide open, which just really made my bones itch. Yuck. Close the door. Also, there's an overflowing bowl of dog food on the ground in this scene, of which the implications are pretty obvious. Cubbage asks if the girl lives alone, and she answers, yes, I think so. Here, G-Man can be seen admiring an abstract picture of a man named Robert Clark. Again, all of these little nuggets we will be discussing later at the end of the video, so don't you fucking go anywhere! I just spat all over you guys. Jesus, that's disgusting. I'm so sorry. You want me to wipe you off, buddy? Here, come here. Let me wipe you off a little bit there, buddy. You just got a little something on your face. I just gotta get it off. Here. There you go. Does that make you feel better? See? We're friends now, aren't we? You can trust me now. G-Man asks who this guy be, and the girl says that he's her father. G-Man asks, did he get you this place? And the girl answers yes. Then, shortly after this scene happens, which I think is better shown rather than explained. After snapping out of her trance, the girl asks what happened to this missing person, and to this, Cubbage has a very ominous response. He says that sometimes we never really know. People just go missing without a trace, and that's what happened to this girl. That's also what keeps them in business. The creepiness factor is also enhanced when a G-Man says this.
It was a big commotion, the whole thing. Young girl. Real beautiful one, they say. Real doughy-eyed.
He really said that she got those Pillsbury eyes. Got those, biscuit-loving eyes. I'm going to assume he's talking about actual dough and not trying to come off as a fucking creep. Now, after explaining how out of the ordinary the whole case is, Cubbage mentions that the young girl's name is Ingrid and describes her appearance as matching that of the main character. This alarms our main protagonist because, well, guess what her name is? What the fuck? Who the fuck said Shelby? No, I want to know who the fuck said Shelby. Did you really think her name was Shelby? It's fucking Ingrid, you dipshit. What the fuck is wrong with you? You don't, come here, you little sh**. When she tells this to the investigators, they just kind of, stare at her in silence for several seconds.
What? A coincidence.
Cubbage still attempts to brush this off, claiming that it's a very common name. Now, this is where Ingrid conveniently remembers the poor Publix chicken that she was brutally torturing in the beginning sequence and asks the two men if they'd like any. Of course, I mean, how could one refuse? After placing the chicken on the table, Ingrid walks over to the china cabinet and opens it up to find some festive plates. The scene changes once again, and Ingrid appears to be standing on a stage illuminated by a bright spotlight. Oh, look, they all showed up just for her. Seriously, the longer I look at these creatures, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. It's like I'm looking at one of my Benadryl demons or some shit. Cubbage begins to clap very ominously here, and Ingrid is like, what the fuck we clapping for, bro? When she looks back to the audience, there's only one creature left, and they seem to be holding up a piece of ceremonial lunch meat. Seriously, the costume design here is really uncanny in the best way possible, obviously. It made me uncomfortable, to say the least. I'm gonna go ahead and let this part play out here because, well, it's just so darn creepy. Also, I don't know if these two lights up here in the booth were meant to resemble a pair of glowing eyes, but they definitely did, and boy oh boy did it alarm me greatly. Once again, Ingrid is teleported back to the house after hugging Cubbage, of course. All the while the men are still talking about how the girl's disappearance didn't make any sense. It was as if she just up and vanished, in their own words. Cubbage begins to start questioning Ingrid. He asks what her dad does for a living to afford such a nice house. Ingrid is unsure. G-Man opens up a notebook and asks if Ingrid has noticed anything unusual. She says that her dog, Frederick, recently went missing. Now this is interesting because earlier in the film we know that she does have a human relative named Freddy, presumably her brother. We'll get into that also. Cubbage asks when Ingrid moved in, and once again, Ingrid is unsure. She seems to have lost a lot of her core memories. Cubbage continues the questioning. He asks if Ingrid's mother is in the picture at all, and Ingrid explains that her mother, named Helen List, passed quite a while ago. Now, G-Man asks how Ingrid's mother passed, to which Ingrid's answer is very interesting.
How did your mother pass, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it was a really unfortunate, very terrible sort of thing. Complete and utter accident, of course. But oh, where to begin with it all? With my mother, where can one begin? Well, my mother was very handy, you see. working with tools, working very often. We'd often joke and poke fun, saying my mom was more man of the house than my father ever was.
But surely she wasn't, was she?
No. No, of course not. I mean, she worked very, very hard. In and out of the house, harder than any of us. But she remained as womanly as ever.
All right, she worked hard. No denying she worked hard. But you said he bought you this house. And if he bought you this house, then he must work pretty damn hard, mustn't he?
Yes. Yes, I suppose that's true, but... Oh, anyway, away from my unrelated childhood anecdote sentiment and back to the one at hand. It was a terrible accident. One of those things that could happen to anyone, really. The things that they warn you about on pamphlets and waivers. My father was just trying to help her. My mother, I mean. Repair a woodshed outside. Using some heavier equipment. Electric saws and things like that. And the equipment just went all screwy and hit her right in the back of the head. God, that's really wild, isn't it?
Cubbage is noticeably more shaken than G-Man here, who really doesn't seem to give two shits. He pulls his little notebook out again and asks the same question from before. Do you live alone? Ingrid picks up on this and is all like, hey man, hey, what the fuck? G-Man ignores this and opens up the notebook again. And here we can see a lovely little drawing of a bullet hole, the language of the ancients, and complete emptiness. And finally, this is where he responds to Ingrid.
Oh, of course. My mistake.
Anyways, the phone begins to ring, and at this point, Ingrid is kind of having an oh shit moment. I'm really starting to think that this whole thing is just one big escape room. That's my theory. The camera slowly pans over to a payphone, and of course, Ingrid answers.
Hello?
Ingrid, dear, I'm going to be late to the show. Ingrid, dear, I'm afraid.
Grandma?
Cubbage then gets up, walks over to Ingrid, and starts exclaiming that she did it. He says it louder and louder until he starts to yell. Then it cuts to G-Man standing alone on a hill holding a teddy bear with a strange mask. He removes the mask to reveal that the teddy bear has a hole in its forehead, and he kicks a soccer ball down a hill and casually walks after it. It is then revealed that Ingrid is also sitting on the same hill before it abruptly sends her back to the room. Then the creepiest scene in the whole movie takes place.
Why don't you eat something, dear? I'm sure you're famished.
we are shown G-Man yet again staring despondently down at all of his overdue bills. Relatable. He picks up a hammer, and after kindly redecorating the walls, he begins what I believe to be a very revealing and honestly quite impressive monologue. Have a watch.
I didn't want you to see me. It wasn't supposed to be like this, you know? But I had no other choice. Everything else I tried fell to pieces. My family was straying. Because, God, your mother. I had to remove you and your brother before it was too late. Before you reached an age where God might hold you accountable for your actions. With you being so determined to pursue acting, naturally I was fearful of what that might do to you. Continuing in the faith. I just pray I'm not too late for your innocence. You're good now, you know? You're pure, and you can stay pure. Your grandmother was an unfortunate casualty. Her kindness blinds her to righteousness. It always has. I'm not doing this out of hatred. I don't hate. I'm doing what it takes for my family, as I always have. My relationship with your mother was a product of sin, my youthful ignorance. She'd been dragging you and Freddie, becoming filthy. Do you think I don't deserve my right to correct what I have created? My work! You are my child! Freddie fought too.
Get that from me, I guess.
You may think I'm a monster, Ingrid. I'm not. I'm a good man. I am. I'm saving you from welfare homes, from hell itself. I knew you wouldn't understand. You never saw things as they were. All you cared about was what I didn't do, what I could have done. You and your mother. Always criticizing me, hating me, when I was the one who... Isn't this what you wanted at the end? To be away from it all? From me? Forever? You're all living in nice little houses. Guess what? I built them. For all your crimes against me. Only God can absolve you.
You know, that was probably one of the hardest copes I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's really giving. I brought you into this world and I can take you out. Ingrid slowly stands after taking a blow to the head. She appears completely disoriented. By now, you might have noticed that all the set pieces are gone and the room is empty. She screams that she doesn't know, presumably her father, and that she doesn't really know what's happening. After falling back down, clapping can be heard from the audience. She stands back up and realizes the person clapping is her grandmother, who also has a hole in her head. Suddenly, we are sent back to reality. It is revealed that Ingrid is indeed slowly dying, and the entire series of events was flashing rapidly before her eyes right before she passed. Her father grabs a large suitcase and starts to drag one of the sleeping bags. After realizing that Ingrid is still alive, he deals what I believe to be the final blow. Now, if you guys remember what I said in the beginning, you'll recall that I mentioned this is going to be one of those films that you're going to have to watch more than once just to pick up on all the little details that were potentially missed. And for one, I think that there's multiple different ways that this film can be interpreted, as there's a lot of stuff that's not directly stated but heavily implied. When Ingrid first gets sent to purgatory, the opening scene is of her violently stabbing that poor Publix rotisserie chicken. God, I miss Publix chicken, man. I miss it. Tastes like home. My personal interpretation, or rather the vibe that I gathered from this part, was a very deeply rooted sense of anger and perhaps vengeance coming from Ingrid herself. She's embittered by a lot of the things that possibly happened to her leading up to this moment, even if she doesn't fully understand why, which does imply that this is a little bit more than just some drunk father going rogue one day. Now, the pictures behind Ingrid on the wall are a little bit more abstract in nature, but they are all very consistent with themes of derealization, or perhaps losing a sense of oneself. So it is here that I start asking myself, why on earth would Ingrid feel this way? Well, Soupy, it's because she got shot in the head. No shit, Sherlock. Wow, you really put two and two together fast, don't you? Wow, so helpful. What I'm saying here is that I really don't think that her father snapping is an isolated incident. There's some sort of perpetuation of a cycle being implied here, at least in my opinion. One of the pictures also appears to be of some sort of church, which does tie into what Ingrid's father was talking about in his closing monologue, which we will be getting into a little bit later. When the picture flies off the wall in this scene here, we are shown that the name John Ingrid is carved on the front of it. Now, after enhancing the picture a bit and zooming in, I believe that the man on the right is actually Ingrid's dad, and there also appears to be another figure standing next to him that's a bit obscured, so it's safe to assume that this second person is Ingrid herself. When Ingrid lets the two suited men into her house, the one meant to represent her dad walks up to this strange picture on the wall that fell, only to reveal that it's changed along with the name. And of course, Ingrid here confirms that the picture is still of her dad. So it seems like Ingrid doesn't even truly know who her dad is, and neither do we. There's a lot of mystery surrounding that. Now, this could have a literal interpretation, right? Maybe Ingrid's dad is changing his identity in some way to hide from the people that he is indebted to, based simply on the overdue bill paperwork that was found on the kitchen table earlier. Or it could also have a more symbolic meaning. Maybe it represents the fact that Ingrid doesn't really know her dad as well as she thinks she does, because hiding underneath that facade is a monster. I'm also a bit puzzled on the fact that the missing dog has the same name as her brother, but I could be reading into that too deeply. Perhaps it's just her mind misremembering details of her family due to the fact that she did suffer a traumatic brain injury. Or maybe her dad actually unalived the family dog prior to the series of events that took place. Shortly after this, there's also a scene where Cubbage, yes, we're still using the Half-Life 2 names, by the way, I don't give a shit, fuck you, walks into an open hilly area where suddenly he transforms into Ingrid. Now this could possibly represent some part of Ingrid herself. It's almost like this guy in the suit is trying to overtake her entire being. More on that later. Now, at the scene where she invites the two men to sit at the table, we can gather more clues by looking at the pictures in the background behind Ingrid in this frame. Here we can see a very wholesome family portrait. Just kidding. It appears to show two highly distressed parental figures with a baby on the right, and then an image on the left of the maternal figure with a baby below her while she screams in agony. So what this implies to me is that Ingrid and potentially her brother's births were very tumultuous in nature and probably invoked a lot of stress for her family. It wasn't exactly a positive experience for them. And this is probably something she's also had to experience the consequences of. of. Of course, I do want to point out the very strange way that the two men talk about Ingrid's disappearance. They keep stressing how strange and nonsensical it was, that there were no signs leading up to it, and that she supposedly up and vanished. Also describing her as doughy-eyed was a very creepy remark that I couldn't help but take note of as well. As sad as it is for me to say this, I find that in a lot of cases, we don't really notice the signs of abuse until it's too late. That could be potentially what the two men were referring to here. There also seems to be hints a lot in this film about how women and femmes in general tend to be more objectified in a sense and are also more likely to be victims of violence, usually at the hands of men. As Ingrid walks over to her china cabinet, you might have also noticed that there are other drawings inside, only these are much more explicit. To me, this seems to paint the picture of how the entire family was essentially wiped out by this one person, the father, right? It could also hint at the cyclical nature of her family's dysfunction. Perhaps this is something that goes back many generations. On the bottom half of the cabinet, we get some very revealing information about the whereabouts of Ingrid's mother. Unfortunately, it is very clearly revealed to us here that she was also unalived by Ingrid's dad. I mean, it's made pretty obvious by the nature of the drawings, in my opinion. I also want to talk about the scene where Ingrid is on the stage being gawked at by a bunch of creepy little fellas. To me, this seems to hint at the fact that there are many predatory individuals, potentially men, that gaze at Ingrid almost in a way that a hungry animal would. That's what these creatures represent, at least to me. They are the predatory eyes of all the men in her life, perhaps even her father. And perhaps she also tried to turn to a male parental figure or male role model at some point for protection, only for it to be revealed in this scene that the man was also a monster all along, waiting to take advantage of her weakness. And the fact that one of the creatures in the audience was holding up a mask could also represent how these types of people are always so good at hiding their true intentions in the very beginning. But the mask always falls eventually. The interrogation scene at the table gives us a bit more insight on how the father is really feeling on the inside. When Cubbage asks about Ingrid's mother's whereabouts, Ingrid explains that she passed away due to some sort of accident. Yeah, right. A G-Man asks how Ingrid's mother passed, to which Ingrid explains that her mother was very handy with tools, and they would often joke that she was more man of the house than her father. G-Man interjects and insists that surely she wasn't. He gets very defensive here and says, well, surely your dad worked hard because he's the one that bought you the house. In a way, he's almost trying to diminish Ingrid's mother's accomplishments. Ingrid then explains that her mother was helping her father with a shed, and they happened to be messing around with some heavy equipment and tools that just so happened to magically unalive her by hitting her in the back of the head. Yeah, right! Yeah, right! So through this interaction alone, we can gather that Ingrid's dad is an abusive, gaslighting, coping sack of shit that felt insecure about his wife being good at things. And he also has a massive amount of debt, apparently. But anyways, when he asks if Ingrid lives alone, Ingrid's all like, hey, what the fuck? You asked me that already, you dingleberry. And then, G-Man gives this creepy little smile at the camera, and he's all like, oh, tee-hee, oh, whoopsie-daisy. The question by itself is already really creepy, and I don't know if it's implying what I think it's implying, but yeah, ew. No thanks. The phone call between Ingrid and Grandma is pretty cryptic, but if you listen closely, you'll notice that she says that she'll be late to the show and that she's afraid. And then immediately after, she starts laughing like the happiest little clown on earth. Now, this to me could be hinting at the fact that G-Man didn't unalive his mother yet, but he's going to very soon. And also the fact that she's laughing and acting so evil and creepy could mean that she also played a part in the cycle of abuse that's taking place, causing G-Man to end up being the way that he is. The next scene is also very poignant, and I'm just going to play it out here for a second.
Ma'am? Oh my God, you did it. 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 You did it! You did it! You did it!
Victim blaming. Need I say more? The scene that follows immediately after shows G-Man standing in a valley with a bloody masked teddy bear with a hole in its head and a soccer ball. This one feels pretty cut and dry, to me at least. But this, to me, is very symbolic of the childhood and innocence that he took from his daughter at such a young age, whether that be from the act of unaliving her or potentially a very long history of abuse that happened prior to these events. He moves forward, while Ingrid gets left behind. Now, the monster puppet scene is honestly one of the, if not the most impressive part of the film. I mean, they made a whole puppet monster thing with glow-in-the-dark eyes. I mean, how am I not supposed to like it? Here, Cubbage says, "Why don't you eat, dear? I'm sure you're famished." And in fact, Ingrid does not appear to be famished. Rather, she seems to have lost her appetite. Now, in all seriousness, here I think a lot is revealed through Cubbage's words. He insists that she wants something that she clearly does not, and he also seems to mimic the facial gestures of the monster, almost like they're one and the same. Perhaps Cubbage's character could represent someone that should have been there to help Ingrid and protect her, but instead he did the exact opposite. He took advantage of her instead, like the monster he really is. In the ending monologue from G-Man, and just to summarize it here, he expresses a lot of anger in regards to both Ingrid and her mother, almost like he's comparing the two. It definitely felt like that to me at a certain point. He claims that he had no choice to do what he did, especially since Ingrid's mother was straying. He really does seem to blame a lot of this on Ingrid's mother, interestingly enough. He has a big issue with accountability. He also seems to have this obsession with maintaining purity. He goes on to say that the reason he unalived her and her brother was to prevent them from reaching an age where they had to be held accountable for their actions. He's basically a crazy guy that let Christianity fuel his pre-existing delusions, which is probably why there's also a drawing of a church in the background at a certain point in the film. He's fueled by this sense of maintaining his moral superiority over others, and yet he continues to deny this reality to himself. He also says that Ingrid's grandmother was an unfortunate casualty, yet her kindness binds her to righteousness. So perhaps, and maybe, he's trying to excuse some of her own questionable behavior in exchange for putting all the blame on Ingrid's mom. He also describes his relationship with Ingrid's mother as a product of sin, which could mean that perhaps they had Ingrid and her brother out of wedlock before they were financially stable, which could be the cause, again, of some of the financial and moral issues that they seem to be dealing with. Who knows? He also rants about how Ingrid and her mom used to make fun of him, which seems to be a reference towards, when Ingrid mentioned her mom being more the man of the house than the father. So perhaps his dumbass felt emasculated enough to unalive the poor woman. In his own words, he also believes that he's saving Ingrid from welfare homes and hell itself, which is likely referring to the fact that she's an aspiring actress. So there's the implied financial struggle, his own moral conflict, and some other weird shit going on there. So I guess he felt in his head that he had hit the point of no return. This could explain the part from earlier when the picture frame containing an image of her father changed the name on the front of it. Because again, it symbolizes the fact that she doesn't truly know the monster that her father is, or rather she hasn't come to terms with it. And at the end of all this, it's revealed that Ingrid's grandmother is looking down on her, menacingly clapping. So the implications of cyclical abuse are very strong here, at least in my opinion. All in all, I just want to stress how amazingly well put together this film is. Everything from the acting, the set design, the story, the hidden meanings to all of it. I can really tell that so much heart went into this from everyone involved. The creator of this film, Maximus Tatum, has a few other creations on their channel as well that are definitely worth looking into. I believe he just started a new series called Red World, which is really interesting. It's brand new, so definitely go check that one out as well. Because I wholeheartedly believe that there's no reason for their work to be as underrated as it is. It's really good. Shout out to every single person that worked on this film. You guys are so talented. Great casting, great camera work, great set, great creature design. Do I need to shout it from the hilltops? Once again, thank you guys for listening to me yap about something that I really like. And come back next week when I do that again. And then the week after that. And I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm just going to keep milking that cow. I'm just kidding. Tune in next time. Goodbye.